Welcome to the Wolf and Bull Podcast. I am your friendly neighborhood wolf.
And I am here today as the bull.
Oh, so you're impersonating the bull. That's great.
I am.
That's very nice.
He's absent right now, and I just thought I'd fill in for now.
That was some serious dad joke energy in the first minute of, not even a minute of doing this. Welcome to the show. If you happen to be looking for a podcast about captivating conversation, business insights, and inspirational stories, then you have come to the right place. We have an awesome episode in store for you today. I recently made a friend while attending the gym. He's a wonderful individual. His name is Scott. And we got to talking about life and business. And it struck me that he would be an excellent guest on our show, specifically because of some of the conversation that we had. So we invited him on the show just to talk about a little bit about his life, his experience with franchise business ownership, specifically Vero Pizza, or Vero Chicago style pizza, excuse me, and his associated path to success. Welcome to the show, Scott Benedetto.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. How's the week going? Everything going well?
Everything's really well, yeah. Enjoying this weather out here, and oh man, it's beautiful.
Oh, this is awesome this time of year, isn't it?
It just is, yeah. We're delayed a little bit, with the heat continuing on. We couldn't wait for it, but now that it's here, it's beautiful.
By the way, we should say by the end of this episode, you got to think, as we're talking about all this, a good animal name for yourself. It's almost a requirement for everybody to get on the show to have some kind of. What have we had? We've had
stingray, we've had the rooster, we have the wolf, we have the bull,
we have the sloth.
The sloth, yeah.
We got a bunch of
them. Quite a few of them, yeah.
So think that through.
You got me wheels turning already.
Exactly.
Pick the rarest animal you can think of. It has to be an animal
that loves pizza for sure.
That's right. They all do.
Exactly. Well, that would be the bull, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Well, just a quick reminder to our viewers, if you happen to like this content, you can find it on Instagram. We also have a Patreon set up. The links to those particular social media platforms will be in the description below. They'll also probably be on the screen right here. But Scott, let's go ahead and jump to the episode. Can you provide our listeners and viewers with some information about your background, your upbringing, and you're originally from Chicago, right?
Yes, that's correct. Born and raised in Chicago, south suburbs of Chicago. And then I moved to Arizona in 1985.
That is the same year I came here originally.
Really? Yeah.
To go to ASU.
Yeah. Well, if you're from Chicago, you know that the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl in 1985, and that's the year.
You start shinging the shuffle or whatever it was.
Hey, that was great. Yeah, that was great. Yeah. But that was my father had contracted all the electrical work for the CBS press boxes in Soldiers Field.
Wow!
And I moved away 3 weeks before all that started to happen. Man. You wait all your life, and then I leave there, But but the timing was right. I was just called to come to the desert for a while.
Very cool. For just a while. I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, well, when you're from Chicago and you live a Chicago life like I did, very fast, furious, you need a little desert time out. That's the way I looked at it. So I went to ASU.
Oh, you did?
Wow.
So you and I think I recognize you from one of the bars right down the street from campus. No, I'm just kidding.
Wakey Jake's?
I went to all of them.
Oh, yeah. Probably. Wow. Yeah. I'm sure we ran into each other.
Exactly.
Arizona State University is known for their party life.
Yeah.
Very clearly.
Every college ever, every university ever thinks it's the biggest party university ever.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm from Western Michigan, Southern Michigan. And so I'm a Midwestern boy, too.
Okay,
and,
good.
Coming out to Arizona, I remember thinking, it's just, a lot of sand, a few cactus sticking up, and that was it. Then I got here and I was like, wow, this is a lot more to it than I originally thought,
Yeah.
So that's good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Very nice.
So you came out to Arizona. You found yourself obviously transitioning from, because I lived in Minnesota for about 10 years, so I understand how absolutely cold it is over there.
Yes.
You came out from Chicago to Arizona, change of scenery, change of lifestyle. Can you tell us a little bit about how your path currently led up to being a franchise owner with Vero Chicago Pizza?
Well, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit about me. I've tried so many things growing up and always had some type of interest in anything that can make a little money, and be fun and not be kind of like clocking in, the 8 to 5 all the time. So I tried so many things. And I'm really grateful for some of the things that I've tried. Because it's helped me to build a certain library, if you will, of knowledge, to be able to tap into as to in business what, are the correct routes to go or the correct paths to take from who your business partners are, choosing business partners or not choosing business partners. I've had so much guidance and wisdom from a lot of people along the road, and I gotta say, there was probably more failures than successes. That's for sure, because of my choices and my choosing a certain business partner based on likability, rather than really doing due diligence and understanding character of the person. What's their foundation? What's a moral compass? Do they have ethics? Those type of things. So it was really a learning experience. I kind of call myself
Probably a painful one at times, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm kind of like a learn street smart kind of guy. And my mom, one time she told me that I didn't have common sense, so I made sure that I got common sense.
Yeah.
But it took a really long journey to get there.
Yeah.
And I love my mother, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure my mom said that to me too. So
Every podcast, call out to mom.
That's right.
You're a smart son. You're a smart son.
That's right.
But you know what? Was this mostly in the restaurant business or a variety of things?
Variety of businesses.
Yeah. But they all have kind of a similar thread, a similar learning process through there.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Because I always went back to the human person. The person or the people that I was involved with or I trusted, and then how that dictated me investing into a company that they might have had more of the knowledge about the business than I did. A quick example was I trusted this one person who wanted to go into picking up oil from automotive dealers and shops and disposing it. It was a big need, and it still is. You have to dispose of it properly. Well, I didn't know anything about that business, and all the environmental regulations that go with it. Yeah. So I just threw a bunch of money in and started selling, because that's what I can do is sell.
Right.
So I started selling, and I remember how actually I wasn't listening to some of the words of wisdom from the people around me, some that actually knew this partner, that I had better than I did. And they said, don't. I'm like, oh no, let's do it. I don't know what I was seeing. But I remember really one of the experiences I had that ended the whole thing was I had a friend of mine that owned a window tinting shop, and we were picking up containers, barrels of oil. And I didn't have anywhere to store them, so I'd store them in the backyard of his window tinting shop, pretty much not even sealed. They may have a cover on it. Well, I didn't realize there was a preschool right next to it.
Oh boy!
Well, one weekend I'm getting on a boat to go on a cruise, and he calls me. He says there are a bunch of people with silver suits in the backyard right now.
Oh no!
What do I do? I'm like, I can't really help you right now.
Oh man!
I'm just. Wow. Can you handle it? And it wasn't a pretty picture, but that was a lesson that I learned.
We've either got a toxic spill possible, or we've got aliens that have just landed.
Well, those kids at the preschool learned a lot about hard work that day when the silver suits showed up to have them carry them
out there. Look at this fun stuff we're playing in. What is this?
Oh my gosh!
That was a story.
And that had to be years and years ago, right?
Yes, it was a long.
Can you
time
imagine
ago.
that today?
Oh, I know.
The trouble with any of that toxic
right?
stuff.
Oh, exactly. The exposure and the light
I got a question for you though. In that story, not the tinfoil suit guy part of the story, but the trust part of the story is. I won't get into my stories. This is not my time to talk about all the gnashing of teeth I've had to do through entrepreneurial exploits. But the trust part of it, did you feel like, especially when somebody else had probably said, "Hey, be careful of this person or that person," I'm a very trusting person. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I wonder if I think that person is changed in some way, or do I think I have something that's going to be different than the other person that they did something to? In other words, is it about you or is it about them? I don't know if I'm articulating that correctly.
Well, you are. And it's a very great question, and it's very profound, because I believe that there's all kinds of different types of people out there that have different levels of morality and code, and how they do business and things like that. And the one way I look at people is we're all broken. I really believe that because I know my brokenness first. And I really believe that we're all broken, and that helps me to have compassion for people. But with that compassion, I think I have been naive in some respects by giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, no matter what. No matter what, you're a good person. Deep down, somewhere deep down in there, you're a good person, and we're just going to pull it out. Yeah. And so I don't want to not be like that person in life either. I don't want to be stained or tainted by the ruthlessness of man, and become reclusive and judgmental and all those things. So I still keep a very open heart, I should say, which keeps my mind open to work with everybody. I'm gonna give Kenny Wayne Shepherd a plug here. If anyone doesn't know who he is, he's a great blues artist, but he has a song called "Everything's Broken," and it is awesome.
Very cool.
So so people will change, but it's really my perspective and how I look at them.
Right.
What's my reaction? How do I respond? Is what I can control. I can't control them.
See, this is a very insightful piece of the puzzle to me, because there's millions of people out there that would like to do something that they've had a dream about doing, some entrepreneurial thing, business associated, large, small, restaurant, all kinds of things out there. And they watch people go through things and bankruptcies and dissolutions and all these different things that can happen. And they get wary of people so much that they get so conservative that they never do anything.
Right.
And then there are the other ones that are always open, and it seems like they're always susceptible to being the one being taken advantage of. Right. And it's a balance. You got to find that line. But I think the key to that is what you were talking about. You got to kind of know yourself. That's the key to it. If you know yourself and how you go about dealing with people, then you start to allow people to change. But you always have something in the back of your mind saying, be careful, because this is business, and you have to make the business successful, or it doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
So it's a very insightful.
Trust is a really important thing. If anybody can count on their one hand 5 people that they would give their life for, really, really trust them, then they're very blessed. They're very blessed. And if you have that, that's great. And those are gifts in our life. Those are the ones that'll be there for everything. No matter what happens, they'll be there at 1 a.m. when you need someone to talk to, or a shoulder to cry on, or whatever the case may be. It's a gift to have. Hopefully it starts within your family, and if that web or that network of love, so to speak, is expanded in your life, then you are very blessed. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. So, question for the both of you, because you both have more experience in business.
He's calling us old. That's what he's calling us.
Wise. More experience. More experience.
Exactly.
But they're more wiser.
He's doing it politically correct.
Most more wiserest than I am. But okay, so we've discussed briefly about some of the challenges that you faced, and obviously the Bull, aka Chris, as the people around him know, have heard some of the stories about the challenges you faced as well. How do you guys tread the line going through all those challenges, from being, even keel as opposed to being apathetic?
It really comes back to that brokenness with me, and that brokenness, and allowing me to live it on a daily basis, and understand that we all need tweaks and fixes here and there, and me having such a deep experience in my brokenness, and coming from the ashes in the pit and coming out of it, and helps me to really understand that there's hope for everybody. There's always hope. And that gives me the strength to find those little nuggets within people that are true, good, and beautiful.
To see that silver lining. Yeah.
I get excited about that. I really live for that. And when we talk about the restaurant, I'll talk to you about my role in the restaurant. I mean, that's, what I do there, because I recognize serving others is most important in life.
Well, you are very clearly a connector. I mean, there's a lot of things you can read out there that put people in particular categories, whether it's personality or whether it's business acumen or a whole lot of things. But it's very clear, having known you 5 minutes, that you're a person that connects with other people. And I'd like to think of myself that way a lot of times. But I also, to your point in your question, one of the things that is both most frustrating and most beneficial to my own psyche, my own heart, when I'm dealing with business things, is the emotional connection you end up having with people. Having other people succeed is a big part of the way I value things and the way I look at things. But I also recognize that if I get too emotional about those aspects of things, let me see if I can couch this right, then what I'm doing in business tends to suffer some. And my biggest struggle throughout my careers in my advancing what I've tried to do entrepreneurially is that very thing, that striking that balance. Because I know me well enough that people often, I'm actually a good poker player, but also people know when I'm not happy. You know what I'm saying? And usually I'm not as unhappy as they think, but I hold stuff back because I don't want to bridge an emotional gap that's going to set people off in the wrong direction.
Sure.
This is one of these, this is an interesting conversation for me in particular because there's a psychological depth to it and a human depth to it that should be applied to business in general and generally is not. You know, when I talk to some people about business, they are 1 through 10. We're doing this. Everybody's just an employee number. That's all they are. And we're going to make this amount of profit. We're going to analyze it. And we're going to fire these people and hire these people. And all those things are in a business person's mind. But to me, there needs to be an application over the top of that, of some kind of, I hate to say emotional connection, but that's what comes to mind when we're talking.
I think that's very powerful, what you're saying. And I think it does apply to the culture today, especially. I don't really like to tag labels onto things, woke, wake, broke. I don't know whatever.
It changes every second.
I don't even really engage in that at all because I look at the person as a human being, no matter what. Whatever their characteristics are, they'll show. And, if I agree, disagree, maybe I do, maybe I don't. It doesn't affect my love for that person. It does not affect my love for that person. That's really, really where we need to be in this world, And I know that there's a lot of the younger generation that really is missing a lot of that love, that emotional support sometimes. There's a lot of that missing today. And I think they're really hungry for it because we're created for that. We're created for that union and communion with each other, not this division. So why do we keep going against what we've been created for? It's like owning a race car or a dragster or whatever and not running it at 250 miles an hour. You need to run in life according to what you were created for. And ultimately it is union and communion with each other, whether it's in business, whether it's personal, whatever it is. We just always should be at that level of respecting one another because everybody has a gift. I remember one time, I'll never forget this. I was called into, my son asked me to come into a 7th grade class on career day. Okay. And I was like, okay, great. I'll come and speak, on what I do. And I thought, okay, I'm going to come in and now I sold copiers at that time. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go into a 7th grade class and talk about the copy machine. This is really going to be interesting. and I said, watch, I get paired up with a doctor.
After a fireman, right?
Right. Yeah. And
My daddy's Batman.
And I did get paired up with a doctor. And he brought these x-rays in of sawzalls in people's neck and broken, and they're like, oh, this is awesome. And then I get up there, I'm like, how many people ever heard of Chester Carlson, the founder of the xerographic process? They're like, if they had tomatoes, they would have thrown him at me.
What a great name. Chester Carlton. That's a great name, man.
And he actually did.
That's a great
name.
A note.
I'm going to go read about it now.
Yeah, right.
So then I thought, okay, I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna cut this in half, and I had this plan. And I'm a drummer in a heavy metal band, and I have 5 CDs we made together. And I'm like, this is what I'm going to talk about the second half, because it was a strong passion. I mean, we were belief that we were going large and big.
Really?
And we rehearsed and worked hard, and we still are together, and we're still working. We had kids that come into the scene, so we couldn't really just break off and do the hitchhiking like Guns N' Roses did. Couldn't do that, but we had what it took, and the music is great, and we love it. And I've got a band of brotherhood. That's what I call it. So I asked the kids. I said, how many people you have a dream? And almost every one of them raised their hand, because the Disney Channel really helps them create that.
Does.
Yeah, right, yeah. And then I said, how many people know your gift? And I got maybe 1, maybe 2. And I thought about that, and I obviously to this day, because this was years ago, that you really should not look at your dream first until you know what your gift is. And that's something that requires a little bit more self-introspective look, and a lot of time to think about what are my gifts? What do I like? What do I love in life? And it can be anything. There's no limit to it. Everybody has a different gift, but I believe everybody has a gift. And then once you realize that, then develop that into your dream, and the chances of you being successful increase exponentially. I really believe that, because a lot of people put themselves in environments where they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that do podcasts that shouldn't do podcasts.
Right. That is true.
Not the Wolf and Bull.
I love it.
Well, guys, it's time to talk.
You got that $20 bill that's slipping through that
we had a prior bet. That's funny. Well, obviously, we've kind of strayed a little bit from the franchise ownership aspect of things, but I do think this is an interesting little vein of knowledge that you're providing. Now, this viewpoint that you have in relation to finding your gift and then pushing towards your dream, how do you feel that applies to your current ownership of a franchise location of Vero Chicago Pizza?
Interesting question. And the response might not be what you think it's going to be.
It's okay.
It's not my dream.
I suspected you were going to say that based on your comments about drumming and everything else first.
I mean, it's not my number one ultimate dream.
Right.
Again, we talked about people, so obviously it involves people, but so does music. You can't have music if you don't have people. They're just as most important. They're equally important. But it's my wife's dream.
Newlywed, are you listening to this?
I have ears where my ears shouldn't be. Okay, I've got ears here and ears everywhere else. I hear everything.
I haven't known Cam that long, but I knew right away he was a committed man.
Hey, it took me long enough to ask the question, but we were together for a long time prior to that.
So I get much joy out of watching my wife's joy. Now, my wife is a very hard worker. I mean, she and my son run the place, and there's not an aspect of it they don't know. This isn't our first rodeo either. This is our third attempt, and we've learned from the first 2 quite a bit as well. So we really weren't looking for anything. I mean, she was a restaurant manager for 5 years. I'll give Serrano's Restaurant a plug.
Oh, nice.
And she was working 50, 60 hours a week. I mean, my time with her was pretty much rubbing her feet, that were always so sore. And I just, it was breaking my heart. But the good Lord knew that. And so the only time we had together was our Saturday dinner time together. And it was at a place called Buddy's. And it was every week. That's where we went. Church buddies. That's what we did. That was our time together. And so we for 5 years. So we got to know the owners really well. We loved the food, and I was kind of observing the business itself because I was getting a lot of input from the business because we would talk to the owners all the time, and the clientele there, or the customer base, was really awesome. I mean, you've got cowboys, ranchers, families, kids, and the environment. It was, you could be filled and you can talk to each other like we're talking right now and hear each other. I kept telling my wife, something is just unique about this place.
There was like an energy.
Yeah. I mean, its location, is on Santan and Power Road is, at 8:00, tumbleweed is blowing down the street. There's nothing really happening except for the dispensary next to me. Yeah. And that's always happening.
Yes, it is.
Now you know why everybody's so mellow in your restaurant.
Hey, pie and pizza, it goes together. I tried to get them to make a pot pie one time. So they thought about it.
This is the real basil.
That's right. Right. So the opportunity came. The opportunity came where the owners wanted to go into the franchise or business, and I thought, wow, getting back into the business. It was during COVID at that time, and I thought, I was thinking about the housing market, because everyone's houses were shooting up in price, but if you sold, you had to buy a house, that was just about the same dollar amount. It wasn't even in the same square footage or whatever, so that wasn't an option. But I had equity in the house. So I'm like, well, let me do something the right way and do due diligence. And so I brought in my wife's father-in-law, and as a former CPA, had 20,000 employees. And I asked them to really inspect this business for me. And he did. Looked at all the P&Ls, looked at everything, everything just looked really good. So, but first I definitely prayed on it. I did. If it wasn't his will, I was not doing it. I've done it enough outside of him. I've done it enough. And the crash and burning, I can't do it again, So I call the lead guitar player in the band is also my guy that does the financing and from my house and mortgages. He's in the mortgages, and I trust him with everything. And faith-based guy too. Love him. We're just connected. He's like, the restaurant. He's like, I don't think so. And I said, Mike, well, let's just see. I said, let's take some of the equity out of the home and we'll use that. And so as he's working on this financially, he's like, every hurdle or every roadblock we came to, he was able to overcome by just a fraction. Right. A fraction. I mean, fees that I didn't have to pay and the loan interest rate and all that. He's like, I think now he changed his mind. Right. He's like, I think this is a go. And I said, yeah, I do too. So we ended up doing it, and another blessing was the financing on the other half of the loan too, because I bought a successful place. Right. They built it, all credit to the Scarnato family. They built a great business there. And so we dove in, and it's been this month, actually could be to the day, 2 years since we've had it. And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's, when I walk around that place, I call it kissing babies and getting votes. Yeah. Passing out ice cream cones and popsicles to the kids. And people are like, oh, you're the owner? I'm like, I'm the maintenance man. My wife owns it. There you go. And that's it. So the franchise thing wasn't really a question. I actually kind of like franchises. To probably answer your question, long-winded. No, but, awesome. But because the family we bought it from, this was their first endeavor in franchising. I mean, there's 5 locations now. So this was their first experience too. Right. So I knew that there was going to be learning curves and growth spurts and all these things. But the one thing that I knew, the gift that they had, was the kitchen. They knew recipe, they knew food, they knew how to manage a kitchen. And that was the strength I needed.
There's nothing worse than going into a restaurant and having an expectation, especially if you've heard about it, and just sitting. and waiting for that expectation to come through, and it doesn't. So,
Experience, right?
Yeah, experience. The food's got to be good, of course.
Yeah.
But there's got to be an experience.
Right.
You going around to tables and, like you said, kissing babies and getting votes and stuff. I'm telling you, we've been to I don't know how many restaurants.
A lot of restaurants.
And
So we do in our spare time as restaurants.
there is a philosophy now where the manager kind of comes over to a lot of, and that's great. But there's places where it's very clear that this person is the head of whatever, or a part owner or whatever, and they come over and they're legitimate, and they really want to see you have a good experience. Those are the places I go back to all the time.
Yeah.
Even if the food is you know?
Right.
Well, I can tell you right now, Vero's pizza is very good. It's very, very good based off of the pizzas that I've had from there.
But you know what the key is? I love food, but I would never start a restaurant, because loving food is not the answer for starting a restaurant, right?
Yeah, that's
because
true.
you know what I do in the kitchen, especially if it's Chicago style pizza.
You mix it all
I
together.
go, okay, everything's ready to go. Get it in the oven. No, my recipe would say, put more garlic in. Put more. That's what I would do.
Right.
Just add some more.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, he's not mentioning that he's making ice cream. So throw some more garlic in.
that would not be a good flavor.
Right?
Right?
Terrible.
there. No.
So you mentioned the family. Their gift is pizza. Their gift is providing that experience to the clientele. What are the advantages of being part of a franchise system?
Watching them grow in as franchisors, and trying to create a brand name, Vero, and get it out there is fantastic. I mean, we took over the business. It was Buddy's first.
Yeah.
And then the name had to be changed because there was a place in Detroit that had the name first.
Of course.
Right at the time we were taking over. So I wanted it to be as transparent as possible, because people would see a different name, they think it's different food. And they're like, oh, Buddy's is gone. So, they see new faces around, they see a name change. That was a concern of mine. But we made sure that was as transparent as possible. And so like 2 years, I think we've overcome that, for sure.
Yeah.
So, but what I like about where they're at, and sometimes the employees don't like this so much, but I do, and I'm held accountable. They're coming in now to do inspections, unannounced. And they want to make sure that things are portioned out. They want to make sure that the kitchen is this, and the meatballs are this way cooked, and this. I mean, it's all looked at with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
But if it's not, we could be fined. So now I know they're starting to grow.
Yeah.
Right.
To package themselves as a bigger franchise and expand.
Yeah.
Well, that's what franchises are about, right? They're about a system.
Yeah.
You're buying into a system. You're running it. It's your franchise, but it's a system here, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's got to be watched, especially if they want the brand to grow, which is going to benefit all of you.
Exactly. Right. Yes. So that I embrace, and I really like that part of being a franchisee, because I feel like what I pay, my royalties,
right?
Is I'm getting something of value, and I really feel like I'm getting something of value when it comes to that aspect, and others too, marketing. Things of that nature. I mean, we're always promoting and being creative on national every day. There's something on a national level every day, food-wise. A pretzel day today, I think it is. I like pretzels.
I like pretzels too. I didn't know today was pretzel day. Thank you for telling me that.
I should have worn my pretzel necklace.
I should have grabbed some pretzels before this. Some bowl of pretzels right there. So, Scott, you mentioned beforehand that your wife had been a restaurant manager for 5 years, right? And she was working 50, 60 hours a week. Now that you're a franchisee, how do you and your family manage the work life, family, business aspect?
Well, the franchisors would really like us to get the restaurant to the point where we don't have to be there that much. That's really not in our nature, though. That's really not. And I mean, my wife is more of the black and white driver. She's the bull. She's no disrespect.
No, hey,
it's hard for her to release the reins, so to speak, even to my son. And my son sometimes gets a little fired up. He's like, go home. I'll take care of it, but she's really into the details. She manages the details, and my concern is to make sure that doesn't overwhelm her. To the point where she's taxing herself and stressing herself out too much. That's my main thing. If I see that happening, then I'll bring it. We'll bring it up to her attention, and I'll talk to her about it, and we'll make adjustments here and there. So it's I told her at one point, I said, we're going to be to like 2 ships passing in the night. We go pretty hard. We really do go hard, but we do have our time, that she has off, and we can spend time together, and at a place of refuge, our home.
Right.
We don't vacation much. Unfortunately, I never really had a honeymoon. That was on me. I still owe her one, 31 years later. I owe her one.
Yeah, I think so.
All the women are like, you jerk. Everyone has their love language.
Yes, it's okay.
You haven't gone down the road of saying, hey, remember that weekend trip we took into the mountains?
Just gaslighting.
Yeah. I'm not a real romantic guy, to be honest with you, but I am definitely my father was a kind of an iron fist kind of guy. He was a supplier, a supporter, and that's what he taught me, so... my wife and I joke about everything, and one of our funny jokes when we talk about anniversaries is I literally took her to Mercy Gilbert Hospital for dinner on our anniversary one night because they have really good food there.
That's what? It's all about the food. Okay, I like that. That's actually good. that's good, man.
I don't think your wife would go for that one.
Beowulf, aka Jen, she's an interesting cookie. We did go on a honeymoon, but every time I go with her anywhere is a honeymoon.
There you go. There's the answer, right?
Yeah, so there you go. But I will say, if you want a really cool place to go,
with you after 31 years,
one place that so Jen and I obviously, we have our little demonic dog now. He's not really demonic. He's an adorable Australian Shepherd Doodle. But he has a lot of energy, and we're outdoorsy people eventually again. So we're going to take him to like national parks and stuff. So if you ever thought about doing something like that, Yellowstone, Yosemite are wonderful places to go if you haven't been.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I just look at it as twofold. You're having dinner in a hospital. If anything happened, you're right there.
Mm-hmm. You're just pragmatic, right?
That's smart. Yeah, that's really smart.
If you're allergic to shrimp, hey, we're here.
No ambulance costs.
Oh, that's great. Well, just to wrap up the franchise aspect of this episode, could you share any memorable success stories or challenges you've encountered during your time as a franchise business owner?
Let's talk about the success stories. The success stories is creating a culture and an environment that people are just not numbers, that they really do matter. I think we use the word experience in the restaurant. Everybody has an experience, good or bad, when they go to a restaurant. That experience is just not the customers. The experience starts with everyone from the dishwasher to the cook. To everybody has a part of that full experience. I mean, if you get a plate that's got food still on it, that's not a good experience. If your waitress isn't there, on time or, even checked your table, not a good experience. So everybody has a part in the experience, the full role of the experience. And that's really kind of top priority for me. And, the rest of it could be, I think it's really important to understand where your limitations are, especially I think in any business, but in the restaurant business, you have to really know, what you're kind of good at and what you're not good at. Work on what you're not good at to get better at it. I'm not the best. I'm really not a cook.
Right.
I'm really not. But there may be a day that I'm called in, so I should be able to know how to make a pizza.
Well, it's interesting to me because Vero Pizza, any restaurant business, if it's contained within these walls, has these hours, has this much ability to seat people. There is a limitation on how you can scale that, right? Mm-hmm. So I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that execution of the process is part of it. But then you get to a point where you're at not a limitation, but within those walls is saturated. Again, to my point earlier, you can't really scale that beyond those walls unless you start buying more franchises, right? Which is possible. But you start looking at the level of how well you're doing with the product you're selling internally, the experience, the food itself, and then the experience around it. And I would think that that is exciting because you can get really, really good at something that if you go around to other different restaurants, especially franchises, honestly, when you go to even big ones, franchises, there are some things that they think are efficient that put the experience off. They're not timely. The food is kind of a certain way. I think that what you're doing, that success, is looking at those four walls and making that contained experience as best as possible.
Right. You know, there's something that I always think about, and this applies to not just food, but it applies towards almost all your major things you do in life, whether it's entertainment, business. You know, not this maybe doesn't. It does apply to business because it applies to the human person, what I'm about to say. And it really does apply to food and music and entertainment. Everything is subject to the individual. Everything is. I've learned, especially in the music side of things, and then apply it to the future. You know, when we had our first CD out, everybody had to hear it. Everybody had to hear it. And I told you how good it is. Boy, did I learn a lesson. You know, I learned a lesson, you know, and because it's really subjective to the individual, like food is too. So you can't tell somebody that they're going to love it. You can't. They have to experience it. You know, they have to experience it for themselves. And then then I always say, give me a critique. And it might be great and it might be not, but it's honest from their subjective point of view. And I think that's really important to understand in life, you know, that everybody is going to have an opinion about something.
There's no lack of opinions. That is for sure.
They're coming out of every crevice of anywhere. Exactly. So many opinions. Well, Scott, we've talked a lot about your experience in the franchise industry. You know, we've obviously spoken in depth about the work associated. Now, I'm a firm believer that hard work and success are reflections of what you do in your daily life. If you don't mind, I would love to jump into some more personal questions on your success, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
What habits or routines do you attribute to your success?
And this could be to my detriment sometimes. I'm pretty, what do I want to say? I'm an orderly, kind of a ritual type person. It's in that, and when I say that could be to my detriment, you know, getting outside of the box sometimes is important for me to be reminded of, you know, go ahead and try this, spread your wings, do that, you know, and because life is a balance. It's you have to have a balance in your life if you're going to experience any kind of joy in this world. I mean, if you thrive off of negative news, there's enough of it out there today more than ever, you know, thanks to social media. You know, I recently found myself, I've never been a TikTok person, but I've recently found myself getting introduced to these TikTok shorts lately. And it wasn't a matter of one time. And I found myself an hour and a half looking at these things. And I am getting quite educated too by some things too, you know, but because, you know, you have to kind of filter stuff out. But that's not really the best use of my time, especially when it's cutting into sleep. Because sleep is important. Rest is important. You know, I think I understand that, you know, So I have to say that it's a gift in some respects, but again, I have to understand the balance. How many people am I affecting around me with my stoic, sometimes way of doing things, or being too rigid? You know, it's just amazing how much we think we know ourselves, and then something in life happens, and we really, you know, don't know.
Well, the interesting thing to me is people will look at you from the outside and they'll give you a perspective. If you let them in, right? They'll give you a perspective. And, you know, a lot of times I think if people criticize me, I'm like, okay, everybody can be a critic of another. It's easy to do.
Right.
We can always find those flaws. You may want to put a mirror up and find them yourself first, right? On yourself, you know, look in the mirror and find those yourself. But the regimented nature of what you're talking about, I almost think it's a requisite for doing the types of things you're doing with Vero. Because if you're entirely an out-of-the-box thinker, I love being out of the box, by the way. Wolf knows better than anybody all the crazy shit I come up with in my
The
brain.
amount of dad jokes he throws into inappropriate conversations is astronomical.
Well, hey, you're going to be grand. No, I almost threw something.
He already knows.
Cut that out.
He already knows. I mean,
I was going to say it might be a granddad joke. So
well, yeah. Well, Jen was saying we should just make the announcement on the show, and whoever says anything,
I just did.
Whoever says anything, we know they're listening. You know,
that's right. But what I was going to say is, sometimes it goes back to what I said a little bit ago. If you like to eat food, don't open a restaurant. That's too out of the box. That's somebody that doesn't know how to think out of the box and then expand their box. Because that's what it sounds like you do. You'll reach out and do something new. It doesn't sound like you're very risk adverse, though this time you said you did your due diligence more so than before.
Right.
But it's not bad to calculate your risks. But what you do then is you take your box, your set of processes, and you put it around the new thing. That's what I think is really important to do myself.
Yeah. And you learn that there's sometimes easier ways to get something done rather than the way that you've done it all the time.
Yeah.
The path of least resistance sometimes is a really good thing for, I remember Time Magazine years ago had the brain of an entrepreneur or executive, the head of an entrepreneur or executive head. Maybe it was Max Headroom. I don't know. It was dating myself. I don't know. But the point of the article was how they think, how an executive, top level executive thinks that, and this word compartmentalization was one way that they think, and they're able to take a thing that's a task or an issue that they're working on in one part of their brain and turn it on and then shut it off, even if it wasn't complete. But knowing that they'll have to revisit it again. And then if another thing came up, they would open that up and visit that at that time. So they were able to, the word is multitask these days, but compartmentalization this was years ago. And I was really impressed with that little article about that. And I thought, wow, my brain goes pretty fast. I go fast. Maybe that's why I'm a drummer, because you have to go fast. And our music is complicated. It's not easy stuff. You have to think. And with what you're doing. But that's, to me, is development. We should, I know our brain's not a muscle, but I treat it like a muscle. It has to be exercised. It has to be worked. Practice memorization, things, whatever that may look like to you. Because if you want to stay sharp, you have to work it. You have to work it out, just like muscle, working out in the gym. So
that's an interesting point about compartmentalization too, because I'm not great at it. I like to do it, but I end up having these lingering thoughts about all these compartments at the same time, and it gets pretty chaotic at times. But I think people that do, when they do that really well, is that thought, when they shut it off, even if it's not done, it drops down into your subconscious.
Right.
It's still being worked on.
Yeah.
It's still being learned. It's still being used as a muscle to create muscle memory, brain memory for drumming or whatever we're talking about, right?
It's kind of, but it could be you have to be careful. It could be a trap. I mean, I'm trying to grow grass right now, and I grew a nice patch of grass in my yard, and there's one patch that won't grow. So that's my enemy right now, and I'm trying to get it to grow. So, I can't just stand there, seed it and water it and watch it grow. Yeah. I have to let it go and then come back and visit it again. Otherwise I'll go crazy.
I heard one time that if you ever want to learn how to juggle, and I don't know if being a drummer, you probably
I do know how to
easily,
juggle. Yeah.
But if you ever want to learn how to juggle, if you're really frustrated or anything, you just
I've juggled in my life.
Struggle and juggle at the same time. I like that's the real art right there.
Did someone mention Max Headroom? What are you talking about?
We're going back to the place right next to it was restaurant.
Oh, gotcha. That's ASU.
Exactly. But no, that's interesting stuff. And are there particular? I mean, a lot of people, read different types of books that help them draw into their success path. There's a million of them out there, of course. Do you do that sort of thing too, or do you study somebody else's plan for having done something you want to do, like the restaurant business? It's one thing to do due diligence, and your wife was obviously in the business. But did you say, okay, here's some things I want to learn about and go out and get something to read about?
Well, interesting, because it goes back again to identifying what you're interested in, what your gifts are, where how you run, how you operate, what's your your motive operandi, whatever that word
Modus
is.
operandi.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So I knew years ago that I was really attracted to self development type books. I remember reading multiple books by an author named Miles Monroe. Maximize your potential, understanding your potential, things like that. Because I was a very lost soul for the first half of my life. I just filled it with pleasure. Everything that felt good, I did, and that was it. And I really went down a dark hole, that almost ended up to death. So I started understanding a little bit more about taking a deeper dive within yourself. So those were really beneficial to me. And then I think the amplification in my life and the real turning point is when I started to read the Bible. Mm-hmm. That really started to change my life, and I started to understand really who I was created for, what it means to love, what love really is, because that's a really strong word. But another strong word is peace. If I'm operating with peace, if I want to drink a water, I'll go to the faucet. If I want peace or love, I'm going to the source of it, and that's Jesus, and He's the source of it. And so I draw from the purest form of that, and trust that no matter what slinging arrows come my way, what waves come crashing down, I know and I can trust that it will pass over, and I just have to endure through it. And that has been proven to me so many times. It doesn't need to be shown to me or proven to me again, because that is my rock solid foundation of being able to every day wake up and be glad. This is another day to live joyfully, and celebrate ultimately the crown jewel, people. Nature's beautiful, but people are the crown jewel.
It's funny. You said something just now, and if you're listening or watching this now, it really, the religious overtone is fantastic, but there's a word in the middle of that you used called foundation, that I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, business standpoint, people standpoint, without that, people get lost.
Yeah.
If they build a foundation on something, and it always ends up with belief. You always have to have faith, and I'm not going to determine for anybody what they should or should not do. All our stories are individual, but I think determining your foundation will. Stephen Covey used to say this all the time in his 7 Habits book. You can, the waves can crash against everything else, but if you're the lighthouse, you have. I forget. I wish I could remember the actual quote. You don't need to. No, you don't need to look it up. Okay. Yeah, it's
paraphrase quote by the bull.
It's basically that all this stuff happens around you, but you need to have something solid to hang on to, something solid to be, some foundational element, right? Because that way you're secure, whether something fails or gets ahead, or life changes, or circumstances hit you. Because life is life, whether it's health or finances, or relocation, or family issues, or non-family, something's going to come along and get you. And unless you have a foundation, typically based on some kind of faith,
right,
you're going to be in trouble.
Right. You have to have an operating system. You have to have an operating system where you just don't even turn the computer on, because you're just going to be led astray. You're just going to you're going to blow with the wind in whatever way it goes. And sometimes you have to go against it. And you have to have, a tree is planted with sticks holding the tree up to handle those winds until the roots take hold and can support the tree trunk itself. Then it can stand on its own. And we have to, you're so spot on and correct. We have to have a strong foundation if we're going to survive, the challenges that we face on a daily basis. We have to have it.
Yeah. I feel like that's applicable in almost anything. I mean, outside of theology, I think that's It's like, you and I going to the gym and trying to deadlift or bench press 1,000 pounds without ever touching the.
Well, we'd have to do that together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't always rep 1,000 pounds, but when I do,
I don't always.
But yeah, well, that's really that's some really good insight. I think that's really good, guys. Now, obviously, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Scott. Do you have anything closing wise that you want to tell our audience, or anything that's on your heart that you feel you need to tell or say?
No, not really. I mean, other than the things that we spoke about, it's I continue to believe that it's getting cliche. We need to make a world a better place. We need to do this and that. Well, it starts with one person at a time. It really does. It starts with one person at a time. And every day we can make an impact on somebody's life. And I don't care if it's holding the door open for somebody. I mean, it's amazing sometimes how I can melt when somebody smiles at me. And that's how rare it is becoming. But if you could take anything away from watching this today, don't let a day go by without being available, reliable, and sensitive to the needs of others. I pray that every morning to help me be that. And so I can decrease. Less of me means more for somebody else, because I know that I'm taken care of. I know where I get filled up at. So I just go back out and hopefully make someone's day better. And if I miss the mark, I'm quick to correct. If I missed the mark and I didn't make someone's day better because of a disposition I may have, and unfortunately they happen to be the first in the firing zone, then I'm quick to correct. And that goes a long way too. Yeah. Kind of like forgiveness, I guess.
I thought you were going to say one pizza at a time. But yours was way better.
Wow. You should only eat one pizza at a time, especially a deep dish.
But you know where to get it, right?
I do know where to get it. Yeah, that's right.
That's great. Well, Scott, this has been a wonderfully pleasant conversation. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed discussing Vero Chicago Pizza, your experience in business, and any advice that you gave for those looking, for what you do, or what you offer, and where you've gotten in life. Is there anything in particular that you want to that you can provide to our listeners and viewers that they can utilize to help support Vero Chicago Pizza?
Coming in and trying it. That's probably the biggest part of it. Really experiencing what we have there. It's the environment is kind of like a little. For those that don't remember the show Cheers, it was a little bit of a all is welcome type place.
Very cool.
Nobody is not welcome in our place. We won't hesitate to tell somebody they're not welcome if their behavior is out of control, because some people get a little fired up about food.
Oh, sure.
They really do, and it's but that's why I like my little Luby's crowd at 4:00. They come in nice and early.
That's funny.
But yeah, so just come on in and try it. Like I said, there are 5 locations. We own the one on Santan and Power Road. So that's the one that we run.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'll make sure to link all that information on the screen when you're talking, and probably social media and stuff like that, so people can check out the website and check out the Instagram and all that stuff. But to our viewers and listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys. If you happen to like the content of the episode today, you can find us on Instagram at The Wolf and Bull. You can also find us on YouTube, Rumble, and as of recently, on Patreon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to go support Vero Chicago Style Pizza, specifically at Scott's location, because that place is the best. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next week.